The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Riverside Community Hospital as Sarah Martinez pulled into her usual spot. She had no idea that by evening, she would be walking out of those same doors for what she thought might be the last time. But sometimes, the most devastating moments in our lives become the doorway to something extraordinary. Sarah had been a registered nurse for 12 years, and every single day she woke up knowing she was exactly where she belonged. Her colleagues often joked that she had healing hands, but Sarah knew the truth was simpler than that. She just refused to give up on people when everyone else had. That stubborn compassion would soon cost her everything she thought mattered. The emergency room was unusually quiet that Tuesday morning when the ambulance sirens pierced through the calm. Sarah looked up from her charts as the paramedics rushed in with an unconscious man who appeared to be in his 70s. His weathered hands bore the telltale signs of hard work, and pinned to his worn jacket was a small American flag pin that caught the fluorescent light. The man was Harold Thompson, a Vietnam veteran who had collapsed at the grocery store while picking up medication for his late wife's memorial service. As the medical team worked frantically around him, Sarah noticed something that made her heart sink. Harold's insurance information showed he was uninsured, and the hospital's new policy was crystal clear about treating uninsured patients in non-emergency situations. Dr. Richards, the attending physician, checked Harold's vitals and frowned. The veteran was stable but needed immediate CPR training refresher due to an irregular heartbeat pattern that could turn dangerous at any moment. However, since Harold wasn't technically in cardiac arrest right then, the hospital administrator Mr. Peterson stepped in with the devastating news that Harold would need to be transferred to the county hospital. Sarah felt her stomach drop. The county hospital was 40 minutes away, and with Harold's condition, that transfer could be a death sentence. She watched as Harold's eyes fluttered open for just a moment, confused and frightened, before closing again. In that brief instant, she saw her own grandfather who had passed away alone in a hospital bed while she was stuck in traffic, unable to say goodbye. The transfer paperwork was being processed when Harold's monitor started beeping erratically. His heart was going into distress, exactly what Sarah had feared. Without thinking, she rushed to his bedside and began chest compressions, her training taking over completely. She worked with the precision and determination that had saved countless lives over her career. For 8 crucial minutes, Sarah performed CPR while other staff members assisted with oxygen and medications. Harold's pulse returned, weak but steady, and his breathing stabilized. She had saved his life, but when she looked up, she saw Mr. Peterson's furious face staring back at her. 3 hours later, Sarah sat in the hospital administrator's office, her hands trembling as she held the termination letter. Mr. Peterson's voice was cold and businesslike as he explained that she had violated hospital policy by treating an uninsured patient outside of emergency protocol. Her years of dedication, her spotless record, her countless saved lives meant nothing in that moment. The other nurses watched in shocked silence as Sarah cleaned out her locker. Maria, her closest friend and fellow nurse, whispered that what she had done was heroic, but Sarah didn't feel heroic. She felt broken. Nursing wasn't just her job, it was her identity, her purpose, her way of honoring her grandfather's memory by ensuring no one else would die alone and uncared for. That evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment staring at the termination letter and wondering what she would do next. At 42, starting over felt impossible. She had sacrificed relationships, financial stability, and personal dreams to dedicate herself to healing others, and now it felt like it had all been for nothing. Meanwhile, across town, Harold Thompson was waking up in the county hospital, confused about what had happened to him. A young nurse named Jennifer was checking his vitals when Harold asked about the woman who had helped him at the previous hospital. He remembered kind eyes and gentle hands working to save him, but everything else was foggy. Jennifer made some calls and eventually pieced together what had happened. When she told Harold that the nurse who saved his life had been fired for helping him, something changed in the old veteran's weathered face. Harold had spent 50 years feeling guilty about the friends he couldn't save in Vietnam, and he wasn't about to let someone suffer for saving him. Harold made a phone call to his nephew Marcus, who worked as a journalist for the local newspaper. Marcus had always admired his uncle's service and was outraged when he heard the story. Within hours, he was at the county hospital interviewing Harold and gathering all the details about Sarah's heroic actions and unjust firing. The story hit the local news the next morning, and by noon, it had gone viral on social media. People across the country were sharing Harold's story and demanding justice for Sarah. The hospital's phone lines were flooded with calls from angry citizens, and the parking lot filled with protesters holding signs that read, "Heroes don't deserve this," and "Compassion is not a crime." But the most powerful response came from an unexpected source. General Patricia Williams, a decorated military officer who oversaw veterans' affairs in the region, saw the story on the morning news. She had served 3 tours overseas and had seen too many veterans come home only to be forgotten by the system they had fought to protect. At exactly noon that day, General Williams walked through the doors of Riverside Community Hospital's ICU, still in her military dress uniform. She asked to speak with both Harold Thompson and the administrator who had made the decision to fire Sarah Martinez. The general's presence commanded immediate attention from everyone in the hospital. General Williams sat beside Harold's bed and listened as he told her about Sarah's compassion and skill. Then she walked directly to Mr. Peterson's office, where she delivered a message that would change everything. The general explained that she represented not just the military, but a network of veteran advocacy groups who were prepared to take legal action against any hospital that prioritized profit over the lives of those who had served their country. More importantly, she had an offer that would transform Sarah's life completely. The Veterans Affairs medical system had been searching for experienced nurses who understood the unique needs of military personnel. They had followed Sarah's story and were offering her a position as head nurse at the new Veterans Medical Center being built just outside the city. The job came with better pay, full benefits, and the opportunity to specialize in caring for veterans who often struggled with both physical and emotional wounds from their service. It was exactly the kind of work Sarah had always dreamed of doing, but never thought possible. When General Williams called Sarah that evening, the former nurse was sitting in her kitchen, still in her pajamas, trying to figure out how to pay next month's rent. She almost didn't answer the phone, thinking it was another reporter wanting to interview her about the controversy. Instead, she found herself listening to a decorated military officer offer her not just a job, but a calling. The general explained that Harold Thompson had specifically requested that Sarah be the one to oversee his ongoing care, and that dozens of other veterans had called asking to be treated by the nurse who was willing to risk everything to save one of their own. Sarah's voice broke as she accepted the position, and for the first time in days, she felt hope returning to her heart. But the story was far from over. Word of Sarah's new position spread quickly, and something beautiful began happening. Nurses from across the country started sharing their own stories of being punished for choosing compassion over policy. A movement began, with healthcare workers advocating for patient care over corporate profits. Harold Thompson recovered fully and became a vocal advocate for healthcare reform. He started a foundation called Heroes Helping Heroes that provided support for medical professionals who risked their careers to save lives. Sarah became the foundation's first beneficiary and eventually its head coordinator. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the brand new Veterans Medical Center, surrounded by colleagues who shared her passion for healing and helping others. Harold was there too, now healthy and strong, serving as a volunteer coordinator who helped other veterans navigate the healthcare system. In her speech at the center's dedication ceremony, Sarah looked out at the crowd of veterans, their families, and healthcare workers who had supported her journey. She spoke about how losing everything she thought mattered had led her to discover what actually did matter, the courage to do what's right, even when it costs us everything. The crowd erupted in applause when Harold Thompson joined her on stage, no longer the frightened patient she had saved, but a confident advocate who had helped create something lasting and meaningful from their shared experience. Riverside Community Hospital eventually changed their policy about treating uninsured patients, largely due to the public pressure generated by Sarah's story. Mr. Peterson resigned, and the hospital brought in new leadership committed to putting patient care first. But perhaps the most touching moment came when Sarah received a letter from a young nursing student named Emily. Emily wrote that she had been considering leaving nursing school because she was discouraged by stories of healthcare bureaucracy and corporate interference. Sarah's story had convinced her to stay, to become the kind of nurse who would always choose compassion over convenience. Today, Sarah Martinez continues her work at the Veterans Medical Center, where she has helped implement new programs for PTSD treatment, addiction recovery, and family support services. Harold Thompson, now 81, still volunteers there 3 days a week and has become like a grandfather to Sarah's own children. Their story reminds us that sometimes our greatest failures become the foundation for our most meaningful successes. Sarah lost a job, but she found her true calling. Harold faced a medical crisis, but he discovered a new purpose in advocacy and service. In a world that often seems divided, their story proves that kindness transcends all boundaries. It shows us that standing up for what's right, even when it costs us everything we think we value, can lead to rewards we never imagined possible. Sarah's willingness to risk her career for a stranger didn't just save Harold's life that day. It started a ripple effect of compassion that continues to spread, touching the lives of veterans, healthcare workers, and families across the country. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness always wins in the end, and that sometimes our darkest moments are just the beginning of our brightest chapters. Together, we can create a world where compassion is always the right choice.